Well, Jesus lifted his eyes, not to the crowd, not to the camera, not to the critics who were coming after him. He lifted his eyes to God. Because sometimes when the world is falling apart, you've got to look higher than the headlines. He prayed, lifting his eyes, because when you're walking in the shadow of the valley of betrayal, you better know where your help comes from. And Jesus did. And so, what did he do? He prayed. He prayed not for power or for popularity or even for peace. He prayed for them. He prayed for us. We see that if we look at the whole chapter. And he didn't pray in private either. He prayed out loud so that they and we could overhear it. So we could remember it, so that prayer would echo into time beyond the cross, beyond the tomb, beyond even every moment when we forget how loved we really are. This was not just any everyday prayer either. This was not a gracious God, thank you for our food prayer, which is a great prayer, or a Lord, please bless Aunt Cheryl's foot surgery kind of prayer, although we do love Aunt Cheryl, right? But this was a different kind of prayer. This was a prayer that folds your name into the wind. A kind of prayer that holds your fear in one hand and your future in the other. This was the kind of prayer that covers your past without even bringing it up. This was a keep them prayer. This was a they are yours, so I'm giving them back to you prayer. We only heard a portion of it a moment ago. This prayer is glory shaped like surrender. It's not lights or cameras or hallelujahs, but glory in the shape of a cross. Glory that bleeds. Glory that costs much. Glory that doesn't shout loud, but shows up anyway. Jesus said, Father, the hour has come. Now glorify your Son, that the Son may glorify you. And that's how Jesus starts his goodbye. Not with strategy or fear, but with a blessing that sounds like a benediction and feels an awful lot like a promise. He says, you gave them to me, and they are yours, and now I'm giving them back to you. Which is more than theology. This is personal. This is tenderness in transition. This is the kind of prayer you pray when you know that your people are going to mess up. When you know that your people are going to scatter, when you know that your people are going to fall asleep right when you need them to be awake. You know, like some of us do on Sunday morning. Don't look around, just pray. This is that kind of prayer. Jesus knows right at the moment he's going to need them to believe the most that they're going to deny him. And he loves them anyway. So he prays for them before the failure. He prays for them before the betrayal. And I don't know about you, but I need that kind of prayer in my life. Because some days I feel like I'm the one who fell asleep. And some days I feel like I'm the one who ran. And some days I feel like I'm the one who said, I don't even know that man. But the crux of it here is that Jesus already knew all of that. He already knew all of that about them, and still he prayed. Still, he prays this prayer that is still echoing today, not just for Peter and James and John, but for you and for me and anyone who's ever been lost in the dark and needed someone or something to hold on to. He prayed, let them be one. Not let them be the same. Not let them be perfect. But let them be bound by a love that refuses to let them go. And then after that, he does something even more personal. It's like a parent packing a child's bag for a trip. He starts handing each of them back to the Father one by one, saying, I have made your name known to those who you gave me. Which is both a confession of care and a testimony of trust. This isn't Jesus saying, these are the men that I've molded. This isn't Jesus saying, these are the minds that I have shaped. Jesus is saying, you entrusted them to me and I held them like a promise. And don't miss that. Don't miss that, because that prayer is for you too. And when Jesus names you as a gift, that means you're not a project or a problem or a resume or a title or a regret. No, according to Jesus, you are God's own child and you have been entrusted to God. Jesus is praying this prayer before the pain, before the silence, before the scattering, before the wheels ever start to fall off, but he knows it's coming. And knowing all that's coming, he sends out this letter into the wind, offering us all a love letter in the shape of a prayer. A last word tucked between fear and glory. It reminds me, especially on this particular weekend, of the kind of letter that a soldier might write and tuck away just before the battle begins. They're not the kind of letters maybe you ever mail. They're the ones you leave tucked away in a safe place just in case. They don't usually say much about tactics or politics or plans. You don't see the soldier writing home and saying, please water the ficus plants or don't forget to pay the gas bill. No, these are the things you want people to remember when they don't remember anything else. These letters usually say something like, tell my sons to be kind. Tell my daughter to keep singing. I know she will. Tell them I'm proud of them and that I love them. I'm proud of you and I love you too. And I'm with you even when I'm not there. Because sometimes when you can't hold your loved ones close, a blessing is all you really have to give. And that's what Jesus does here. Before the cross, before the world gets flipped upside down, Jesus blesses the ones who won't get it right. Jesus blesses the ones who fall asleep, the ones who are going to run and hide and lock the doors behind them. He knows all of this already, and he blesses them anyway. He doesn't wait till they're ready. He doesn't wait till they're strong enough. He doesn't wait until they can recite a creed or a faith statement without stumbling. No, instead, he blesses them in the midst of their becoming. He prays for them in the midst of their misunderstanding. He says they are yours before they even begin to act like it. And I don't know about you, but I also find that comforting too. Because I need a God who blesses me before I know what to do with the blessing. And I need a Savior who says, you are mine, even when I don't feel like I'm anybody's anything. Because there are days, and you know this too, when the nights are long and we can't remember the last time we felt worthy of anything. There are days when the silences are loud and all we really want is deep down for someone to say our name like it still matters to them. And that's why this prayer is so powerful. Not because it's polished or public, but because it's personal. Jesus says, I know you don't get it yet. I know you're going to mess this whole thing up, but I want you to know right now that I still and will always be holding you. And that is the kind of love that will keep you together when everything else is falling apart. It's also the kind of love that makes you want to live and pray for others in your life too. The kind that makes you say, I'm just going to send that text that says, I just wanted to let you know that I'm praying for you today. And here we are, over 2,000 years later, still being carried by that same prayer. Still hearing our names spoken by Jesus in it. Still trying to live as people who have been prayed for by the living Christ. And maybe that's the whole invitation today. To let the words that Jesus prayed here before the cross become the words we live by day after day. Not because we're worthy or because we even really understand what it's all about, but because we have been loved like that. With a love that doesn't just protect, but draws us together, turning strangers into siblings and fear into fellowship. This is what Jesus is praying for. In fact, that's exactly what Jesus prays for next. He says, protect them so that they may be one. So that they and we may be one. Not the same, not carbon copies of one another, but one. And friends, in this increasingly divided world, that is a radical, relevant prayer. Because we live in a world where most people are far more comfortable building fences than they are sharing tables with people who don't believe exactly like them. But Jesus didn't pray, let them be right. And Jesus didn't pray, let them all agree about everything. No, Jesus prayed, let them be one. Because the heart of the gospel is not about sameness. It's about belonging. It's about the kind of unity that makes room for different voices and different stories and different cultures and different backgrounds and even different scars, and still says, you are mine and I am yours. Jesus is about to step into betrayal and injustice and violence and death. And what's on his lips? Us. You and me. Did you get that? He walked as far as he can walk with them, and now's the part he has to do alone. He knows that. But even as he walks alone, he prays that we would stay together. And not just sit or stand or be in the same general place together. Jesus is praying for a unity that is deeper than convenience and stronger than preference. Jesus prays for a shared spirit. For a bond so deep that it can survive any storm. For a love so real that it doesn't break even when everything else is breaking. And friends, this isn't just meant to be a first century hope. This is meant to be a word and a prayer for you and me right now. Because we do live in a world that profits off our division. And we do live in a world that sells fear to us like fast food. And we do live in a world that tells us to pick a side and forget everybody else. But Jesus says, you don't belong to the world. You belong to me. And I am sending you back into the world with a prayer that will be wrapped around you like a blanket. Can you feel it? Have you felt Jesus praying for you on the days when grief is heavy and you don't know what to say? Have you felt Jesus praying for you when your confidence collapses and your faith has holes punched all in it? Have you felt Jesus praying for us when our body feels broken and the church forgets who it was created and shaped to be? That prayer is still alive. That prayer is still echoing throughout time. That prayer is still doing the holy work of holding us together when everything else in this world wants to pull us apart. Have you felt it? I have. And so here's the invitation. Don't live like you've been abandoned. Don't live like you've been abandoned. Live like someone, and not just anyone, The living Christ is calling out your name in prayer. Live like someone packed your lunch this morning and whispered your name over it and then slid a note in the bag that said, "You are not alone." Live like someone prayed over you before you even woke up this morning. Live like someone prayed for our unity. Not our uniformity, but our deep down, bone deep belonging to a God who knits us together and says, This is mine. And maybe, just maybe, when we begin to live like we've been prayed for like that, we'll also all start to live and pray for one another like that. Maybe we'll stop performing church and start really embracing one another as family. And friends, when that happens, the world will know who we are. Not because we shout or publicize it, not because we're hashtag winning, but because we walk and live differently, because we love differently, because we know in some mystical, holy way that we are one. Friends, you are the ones Jesus prayed for. Not because you're perfect, but because you belong to Christ. You belong to God, and maybe that's the whole sermon, really. Maybe that's all we ever really needed to know. That in the final hours, when Jesus could have prayed for anyone or anything, he prayed for you and for me. For all of us, that none of us would have to go through life alone. And maybe the table is meant to be an answer to that prayer. Because here, in the bread and the cup, we're reminded that love is more than just an idea. It is a broken body and a life poured out. A holy presence still holding us together even when everything else seems to be unraveling. This table was never meant to be one for the worthy. It's one for the hungry and the tired, for the ones still learning, for those of us still learning how to belong to one another. And so this morning we come. We come not because we understand it all, but because we've heard our name spoken in the silence. We come not because our hearts are full, but because we are longing to be made whole. And we come because Jesus has prayed for us. And because Jesus still does. And maybe, just maybe, this is how we begin to believe it.